Hey everybody, I'm Adam Hildebrand. I'm joined by David Peters today, who has retired as the head of archives and was an associate professor here at Oklahoma State. And with OSU coming up on its 150th commencement, we wanted to take a moment and kind of dive into some of the history of commencements at Oklahoma State. So we're going to do that with David today. Thanks so much for giving us some time. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning. What did those early days of OSU commencements look like?
Let's talk about the origins a little bit. So the first 50 or 60 students that enrolled in December of 1891, about half of them didn't have high school diplomas. And so they entered what was called the sub-freshman or preparatory classes. So roughly half of the students are getting ready to enter college, and the other half are called freshmen. That first 6 months is really kind of an introduction to creating a curriculum and trying to figure out how they're going to run the university, because there are no facilities on campus. There's only a handful of faculty, and so mostly they're meeting in various locations in Stillwater, including some of the churches. So it's not till 1893, the following full year, that one of the faculty members, Alexander Magruder, thought we need to begin establishing kind of an annual series of events that happen in a normal college environment. One of those, which is commencement. So he proposes that they have a commencement in 1893. Now, all they have are sub-freshmen who aren't even in school yet still, and then you have freshmen who have kind of working through their first year. But they propose a 3-day commencement, and the first day it was going to be on a Friday, June 16th, 1893. They were going to have the official commencement ceremony. This included presentations by I think it was 6 of the students who had memorized various poems or literature. And so he provided then a medal to the winner of that contest. And so in 1893, June, they meet at the Methodist Episcopal Church South, which was near downtown Stillwater, that had the largest capacity of any church in town. It had good old 250, standing room only. They filled the church. And the students then gave these recitations. And Kate Neal, who was only 15, so she must have been around 14 when she first enrolled, but she was a part of the freshman class. She won the first Magruder Medal at the first commencement ceremony in June of 1893. 2 of the other participants in that would be members of the first graduating class 3 years later. So the first one is held at the Methodist Episcopal Church South. Standing room only crowd of 250 people. 6 students then did recitations or memorization. Kate had a younger sister, Amy, who said she listened to her sister practice the poem that she read so often that she said, I could have subbed for my sister if she had forgotten her lines. So, but it was a rather formal event for the time, and really the whole community was involved in that first commencement, 1893. 1894, then we have our second commencement. We still have no graduates. We have now sophomores, but Magruder sponsors a second contest for reciting poetry or literature again. This time, I think it was George Holter and Frank Waugh, who are other faculty members, kind of organized the ceremonies that year. That was June 16th also of 1894. They meet at Old Central. It was called the Assembly Building at the time. So now we finally have a permanent building on campus, and they hold the first commencements on campus then, beginning 1894. Between the speeches or the memorization, the recitations, they had orchestra. They had a small orchestra that would play. So they'd have 2 speakers, an orchestra number, 2 speakers, orchestra number, 2 speakers, final orchestra number, and then they would arrange for deciding the winner of the contest. The second commencement, 1894, George Bowers, who was a member of the class of 1896, he won the Magruder Medal that year. Then the final commencement without graduates is 1895, and this time was a little different. 6 members of the junior class were the finalists, and they spoke on papers they had written. And so all 6 finalists happened to be the 6 graduates the following year. It was the 2 Adams brothers, James and Arthur, Irwin Lewis, Gerald, Frank Duck, and so that was, and Oscar Morris. each did a presentation from a paper they had written during the school term. Arthur Adams won the Magruder Medal that year for his paper on the development of electricity and future benefits that electricity was going to provide to society. The other 5 papers were on agriculture, so I don't know if that was weighed more because of the engineering, the rest were on ag. But anyway, Arthur Adams won then that last Magruder Medal. And then 1896, we finally have our first graduation with graduates.
Yeah, and by that time they had established a little bit of history because they had been doing that for the first 3 years, and so that first graduating class, as you mentioned, not very big. But what do we know about that first graduating class?
So they had all entered in December of 1891. So they had been through really 4.5 years of school. There were 6 males. Kate Neal, who had won the first Magruder Medal, she had to withdraw from college the semester before graduation. Her father was on the faculty. He was head of the Agriculture Experiment Station. He had passed away on campus, and her mom took her and her younger sister, Amy, back east to Tennessee. So she was 1 semester shy of being with that first 6. So she would have been our first female graduate, but didn't quite make it. 3 of the graduating class had connections to family members, or they themselves had provided property for the development of the campus. So Frank Duck had provided 40 acres of his original homestead. Lewis, his parents had given 40 acres. Oscar Morris, his parents had given 40 acres or provided 40 acres. So 3 out of the 6, their families had been invested in providing the land for the campus itself, which I think is a little distinguishing characteristic. But yeah, all 6 of them matriculated, were our first 6 graduates. And most of them had ag backgrounds and graduated it was a general Bachelor of Science degree, but it was mostly their work was in agriculture.
So you go from 6 in the first graduating class, and you think, well, it can't get much smaller than that, but it did.
It did.
The very next year was the smallest graduating class, but it was still a very significant one.
Yes. So the second class, 1897, was a class of 3, and the distinction there is that Jessie Thatcher Bost, our first female graduate, first woman graduate, was in that class. She had also actually been a part of the 96 class before, but had to drop out because she was sick for a year. But she rejoined and then finished with that class. Andrew Caudell and George Bowers were other members of that class. George Bowers had won the Magruder Medal earlier when he was a freshman, and now he was a part of this class with Andrew Caudell. And so that was the smallest class we've ever had, and our first woman graduate.
You go through that experience and then really kind of settled into a rhythm. The university's growing over that time. You're seeing more and more students come in. Obviously, more buildings are popping up on campus, and you're starting to get a little more of a feel. Fast forward almost 100 years, and you've got this big campus culture, and the university's grown a ton, and you start getting some pretty big names showing up around the commencements.
1974, Richard Nixon is invited to be our commencement speaker at OSU. This is in the summer, right before the summer. It's Watergate is going on. He has very few friends in many parts of the country, but Senator Henry Bellman had been an integral part of Nixon's reelection in 1972. And so Bellman invited Nixon. He thought Nixon would be comfortable and that he would be warmly received in Oklahoma, which he was. And so the president of the university invites Nixon to do our commencement address. So in 1974, it's the first time our president appears on campus to do our commencement address.
Let me say, Dr. Kahn, that I am most grateful for the invitation that was extended to me to come to this university. My good friend, Senator Henry Bellman, said that this school had once a tradition of non-controversial speakers. Well, now you've changed it tonight. To the members of the graduating class, I want you to know that in 25 years plus 1, they're going to be celebrating a new year. Most of us will not be around, but you will. It comes once in 1,000 years. And on that new year, you'll look back to this day, and then you will judge your generation. I say to you, when the year 2000 comes, I am confident that the members of the class of 1974 of Oklahoma State University will look back and say, yes, we met the test. Ours was the great American generation.
So this was the first time a sitting president came to campus. It just happened to be at the end of Nixon's term because of Watergate. And just a little side fact, we have Senator Henry Bellman's papers, and included in that we have the two chairs that Pat and Richard Nixon sat in when they visited OSU. The second president, sitting president who came, was George Herbert Walker Bush. He comes in 1990, in May of 1990. The state regents had changed how honorary degrees, honorary PhDs or doctorates were given. And so we hadn't given an honorary doctorate since 1930, but President Campbell, president of OSU, wanted to give an honorary degree to George Herbert Walker Bush. Well, the regents had said, you've got to have a department that gives a PhD in order to give an honorary degree. Well, at that time, our political science department did not give a PhD. So then Campbell went to the economics department, and the economics department finally said, oh, yeah, we will agree. President Bush had an undergraduate degree in economics from Yale. So he ended up being our first honorary degree in like 60 years when he was given his honorary doctorate in 1990 when he appeared here. So a little bit of controversy regarding that honorary degree, but otherwise it went off well. He was well received. Of course, he mentions cheese fries at Eskimo Joe's, and so he was warmly received. Barbara had been here earlier. She wasn't here on that trip, but she'd been here earlier to Stillwater during one of the campaigns. Apparently had visited Eskimo Joe's and told the president that he needed to get T-shirts for all the grandchildren. So.
I'm sorry Barbara couldn't be with me here. She did tell me to get a beer and some cheese fries over at Eskimo Joe's. And hoping at the same time they have enough T-shirts for all the grandchildren.
And those T-shirts are still being sold today and have gone down in history certainly since then. And of course, he was not the only President Bush that would come to campus either.
So that in 2006, his son, George W. Bush, is invited to come to campus. It's also at Lewis Field still. Maybe the transition to Boone Pickens is beginning to take place, but it's referred to as Lewis Field. So it's an outdoor. There's thousands of people there. He also mentions the cheese fries at Eskimo Joe's. I've been to both, Nixon's and both Bush's commencements. With the last one, George W. Bush, I just remember it was a huge helicopter that brought him from I don't know whether the Stillwater Airport, but it was an impressive helicopter that brought him, and they landed in right by the stadium, and then he came on in. But so,
what an interesting, commencement is already a lot goes into that to begin with. You're now graduating thousands of students at a time, and there's a lot of logistical things that go into that. I would imagine when you bring a president into that fold, that just turns everything up to 11. There's got to be a lot of planning that goes into that.
And so that's one of the other issues with inviting the three presidents to speak at commencement is then working with Secret Service and all the details that go into that. Local law enforcement have to be expanded. There's quite a bit of effort that goes into presidential visits, especially at commencement time, because now you have tens of thousands of people coming into Stillwater, and then of course you have thousands of graduates, and just the logistics for all of that, I'm sure is quite cumbersome, but they've done well every time.
They sure have, to the tune of 150 commencements at this point. So, well, David, we really appreciate you giving us some time and teaching us a little bit about the history of OSU commencements, and we'll be looking forward to some more conversations in the future because there's plenty of history to learn about here at Oklahoma State.
Happy to be involved. Thank you.
That's David Peters and Madam Hildebrand. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.